it just keeps getting better and better. As a diehard, I'm not going to say liberal. We all know that I'm voting for Trump, but I digress. Diehard fan, I'm going to treat myself to some flavored water. If you haven't tried this stuff, don't bother because it's way overpriced for sparkling water. But man, it does. If you're not a cool person and you want to look cool at a party, you definitely have a can that has water in it, because if you're going to be the only guy sitting in the corner over there, you might as well look like you're at least drinking something spectacular. And that's a good segue to this race. And you guys know my thumbnail. My thumbnail says that Jason Anderson has been penalized. And yes, he has been penalized yet again. All right, let's look at what that penalty is before the penalty report has been released. Who knows? They could change it, but this is what it is right now. His last race, he was in front of Dylan Ferrandis, okay? But here they have him as 8th. The broadcast said that he ended up going, what was it? He ended up finishing 4-1-7. But here, now they've changed it to 8th place. And we can see it here on the session notes on the provisional results. Penalized 1% position, Jason Anderson. Boom. Does it affect anything as far as that overall? Actually, it did. It now moved him off the podium. So you have Aaron Plessinger actually being on the podium versus Jason Anderson. That is a big hit. Absolutely a big hit as far as bonus money goes. Everything, the points in general. Here, I haven't even looked at what the points are going to stand up from here. Combined points, if it's going to load correctly. Now, Jason Anderson is 67 opposed to what he was going to be beforehand. That is a huge, huge blow to the guy that arguably, who gets a better redemption race after the last weekend between what was going on with him and Jett? That second moto, when he won, he cut over on Jett. They were starting next to each other. Jett was on the inside. He got in front, moved straight over on him. And that is basically you going, hey, I'm not putting up with any of this stuff. Yes, you are the fastest rider as of right now, but I'm not going to get out of your way. And speaking of people that are getting out of his way, I thought what happened last weekend at San Fran was going to show that, hey, guys are not going to blatantly get out of the way of Jett Lawrence. However, we have a certain individual, Sexton, getting out of the way of Jett right here. I was blown away by this, to have literally the biggest guy in the field, this guy that looks like he's 245 pounds. Yes, I'm over exaggerating. He's probably only 180 pounds, getting out of the way of Jett, who's probably 165. Yeah, Jett has the inside line here, but Sexton just straight up looks over and doesn't try to zoom back to take the line because he still has the wheel. He just lets him by. Yeah, does it end up working out for him in the long run? Oh, I'm not showing it. Does it work out in the long run for him? Yes, it does. It freaking does. And I wonder why I'm not freaking showing it. It is not showing it here. Here, maybe if I change this up here to there and move to this, boom. All these editing, freaking all the editing is crazy. But look at this. Sexton to literally just look over and give Jett the line is crazy. That blew my mind. Yes, it worked out for him at the end because Jett ended up going down, and yeah, so what? But that is showing to me that Sexton is not vibing with the bike. Yes, I did say that he was going to win this race, and he won one of them. Good for him, but he had that bad 11th place finish, and that's a bummer. So really, it seems to me as if both Jett and Jason had a redemption ride for sure. But I sort of want to give it to Jason as far as being ahead of everything, because what showed from him was just sheer raw speed on some of the passes that he made. And when the penalty comes out, we're going to learn more about it this week, where it's probably some sort of an off track deal. I know when he did crash, he did potentially gain an advantage going completely around the whoops, but I mean, he didn't make any passes therefore. So, that is being a little bit of a stickler. However, I am the guy that also gives the race directors and AMA some sort of a hard time when it comes to fines and penalties not being appropriate. So if they're turning more into like an F1 where they're stickler about stuff, I'm for it. I'm absolutely for it. So good. And Jett to me seemed like he had it under control for a while, and then he lost it. Totally seemed like it wrecked him. But that's what the deal is with these 3 races. There's so much racing going on. As a typical fan, it's very difficult to kind of follow what's going on, who finished what, where, when. I don't know if I entirely like the Triple Crown scenario, just for the fact that it mixes stuff up so much. I like the racing. I really, really do. The racing is good. These guys, this track in general just seemed incredibly fast. This was like moto level speeds, but with quads. And to me, that just seems dangerous. And also to have Adam Cincerillo being the only rider that is injured. Well, one of the only top riders right now. We've got quite a bit more other riders with Carnow and Hunter's hit the ground pretty hard, and some other riders that aren't racing anymore because of some of the stuff. But usually by round 4 last year, there was 2 or 3, maybe even 4 factory guys that weren't racing anymore. And now we just have pretty much Adam Cincerella, which is a bummer, but that probably has a lot to do with the 2 mud races. So the season really begins now. And who am I most impressed with? Well, I'm actually most impressed with Webb. He said he was under the weather, but he goes 2:25. And I'm a little disappointed with the 3rd race, because if you followed my podcasts and stuff we talk about, the biggest gripe I have about the Triple Crown series is the 3rd race is usually a yawner. This one was an exception, right? Because you had Jason Anderson crash at the beginning. Then you had Jett basically give it away at the last lap before he was going to end home with a podium. With I on this live show would definitely be saying that Jett had the redemption ride. It wasn't given to Jason Anderson. It was Jett 100%. He spoke back. Boom. He got it handled. He showed everybody he's back on the podium after a couple rough rounds. But no, something is showing that he can be beat. There is a kink in the armor, and he's doing it. These guys are overriding. You've got Aaron Plessinger, that when I was watching him this race versus last weekend, which was a mutter, he seemed to me as if he was overriding the track much more than previously before. He was over jumping stuff. He was getting out of control, not as much as the other riders, but he had the confidence to prove that he can continue to ride at this level, even on a dry track. And I do like how Carmichael did say, hey, you've got the A and B rider. You've got the show pony, and then you've got the guy that's just there to fill a spot. And that rider has the red plate. I am such an AP fan, especially for him being an underdog. Anybody on here, if you're not a fan of AP, I'm sorry. I need to figure out a way to convince you to be a effing fan of the Cowboy. I mean, Yellowstone, they are on strike. We haven't seen any new season for, God, it feels like 24 months. But AP is the closest thing we have to what the heck is happening with the season final over there. I think that season's actually going to happen at the end of this August of this year, something like that. Anyway, I digress. It's really cool to see him being able to do that. But I get back to my gripe with the Triple Crown. Webb phoned it in. He finished 5th place. He knew that he had it in the bag. And we saw the same thing with Levi Kitchen in the 250 class. He even told Jason Thomas on the podium that, yeah, I knew exactly where I was in, and I knew that I didn't need to not have Joe get by me. Talking about Joe Shimoda for the podium position. He's like, hey, I'm going to finish 3rd as opposed to 2nd this last round because I know I still win. And as a fan, I don't want to see that. As a fan, I want to see blood and guts and stuff that happens like the futures race. Did you guys see that freaking futures race with Davis and Towers? That was a clinic. That was a freaking clinic about how to ride a motorcycle and how to race fairly. Those guys went back and forth with not taking each other out, and they did it for 6 or so laps. That was honestly one of the best. It would have been the best race of the entire year if you just changed their names to Jason Anderson and Jett Lawrence. If we saw that race in the futures class, oh my effing God, just that best race of the year, maybe even of this decade. I'm not kidding. That was an amazing. I am a huge fan of Davis and Towers now because they prove that they can ride aggressively and clearly. And with those riders, Davis really impressed me by how smooth he was. He stood up a lot. He wasn't doing a lot of the quads like Towers was. I mean, Towers is on a Star Yamaha, and that whole entire team, all 69 of them, you can't help but just facilitate a crap ton of really good riders if they're constantly riding together like that. I don't know how they have that big of a team. But Davis, oh my goodness, man, a New Zealand kid that's 16. Wow, I am so impressed. I'm actually just following him on Instagram just because of this stuff. And I encourage you guys to do the same. That to me was the best race of the night, even though we had 6 races of 250s and 450s. If I'm moving on to, well, actually, I got to talk a little bit more about Jason. Jason being able to hit that triple quad. If you watched my track analysis video, I talked about that being the line and it was going to be sketchy, but that what he was doing every lap enabled him to get around some guys. Yeah, that second quad was super high. And so the first couple races, it wasn't as big of an advantage until the last one where most riders were not hitting that triple in downside. But because nobody was hitting it, there wasn't any ruts to transition under there. And as the night goes on, these triple ons or the lines that are being overused, there is a lot of ruts in between both of the jumps in the middle of those transitions. So guys have a hard time of making the line every lap. So if you can jump over that stuff and get a clear shot, it's better for you. You can push and scrub and ride fast. And we saw Tomac come out. And really the only thing Tomac has been missing, I even am guilty of my last podcast here on Friday going, can Tomac win? Can he? Is he hiding a injury that is supposed to take twice as long to heal where he's not ready to race? But no, he shows how strong he is and he just needs a good start. This field is so deep that if these guys don't start out front, they're going to finish 11th. It's mind-blowing the depth of field here, and I hope everyone stays safe just for that sheer fact. So I'm going to take a small little break here and tell you guys about today's video sponsor. Is we got to make sure that we have guys that support the racing, and this is Precision Transport. They are a big freight company. If you've got a dry load or refrigerator load that you need to move big stuff, make sure you hit these guys up. They are a broker. They can get you hands. They will give you the best deal possible around the United States. Their number is 877-827-0618. Big motocross, supercross fan. They're big into jiu-jitsu. They do a lot. They help out a lot of people in the community and in the martial arts community. I encourage you guys to go check them out. If I'm moving on to a little bit of the 250 guys, because man, RJ, I feel he always has this stuff just slip through his fingers. And he was the fastest qualifier. He came out swinging in Moto 1. He was mid-pack or on the front, but ended up finishing second right behind Levi. Comes out swinging in the next race, and he does a really good job with racecraft because Levi was going to pass him. Levi was absolutely going to pass him if the race was a little bit longer, but he ended up taking the line away from him, running him high, making sure that he kept it slow enough to where he blocked him to where Levi couldn't cut back underneath him and take it. Because we've seen that happen before where guys just swing out wide and they keep going, and then some dude just sneaks right underneath him, aka Cooper Webb with Ken Roxon a few years ago. Man, would have been a sheer bummer for Kenny during that time. Anyway, I think he was going to win his first Suzuki main event there, but Cooper took it away. But then that last race, he gives it up. He crashes again. Yeah, he still finishes second because of the Triple Crown, but the Triple Crown saved him. But if it wasn't the Triple Crown, RJ is SOL. He's not going to be able to beat Mr. Consistent as far as Jordan Smith. But Jordan Smith, I believe, went 4.84 and landed on his head multiple times, which is unlike that guy. He's just sort of, I almost want to say Robin Hood, because you know how good he is, but he's just never really there in the spotlight, but he's always just there. You've got somebody as like RJ who is in the spotlight, but then he takes himself out. And then you've got Smith that just comes by and takes it. But as far as Levi Kitchen, Levi's a really fit kid. He's just skinny. And I want to note that because I have a feeling that once he moves to the 450 class, the kid's in his early 20s, but once he moves 450, be sure to pay attention that the 450 class does require these guys to be able to beef up a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised to see Kitchen have a little bit more fat in his cheeks and a little bit more fat around him to where he can handle a bike that is that big. I think he's going to gain some weight once his 250 contract is over, but he looks good, looks freaking good on that pro circuit. So is that a scenario where you've got riders that are on Star that if you're not one of the top guys, you don't get that much attention? Because how can you have a team that is big and give each guy equal opportunity with stuff? Here I am sounding, I'm bringing politics into it, which they don't need to, but racing is politics. So I'm just saying you cannot focus on 27 riders as well as you can 3 or 4. And Mitch Payton does a really good job of grooming 3 or 4 guys to keep them up to speed. And I think Levi is really gelling, and you don't even have to think it. It's just plain facts and proof of how he's riding. He feels better there. He maybe feels a little bit more accepted. I'm not inferring anything, but I'm inferring something that not everybody gels with stuff. And Sexton seems with KTM to Honda, it seemed like he was unhappy at Honda because he had this little superstar coming up that was trying to take his job. And now in KTM, ironically, you've got somebody else that's sort of taking the spotlight, and it's teammate Aaron Plessinger. And if I'm talking about guys taking each other's job, that's another transition to Jorge Prado coming over here, who's taking Justin Barcia's gas job. Yes, I'm saying it. I'm saying it. Barcia's not doing that well. And you've got Prado, who is not a supercross rider, and he's busting out big triple ends, doing well in the whoops, hitting some quads, riding smooth. And you know that this guy is not giving it 100% because he's got an MXGP championship to defend. He's making a lot of money as long as he continues to race over in Europe. But I definitely think he is going to be back here on that gas, and we'll see if gas can afford both riders. Because somebody like Prado is not going to be cheap. Absolutely not going to be cheap. And therefore, I think Barcia's time on the gas is limited. Unfortunately, we need to see some really good rides out of him in order to keep that ride. So, man, I have so many freaking notes here, and there's just so much going on between the dynamic between Jett falling apart and coming back and falling apart, between Sexton falling apart, getting lapped one race to then winning the next, to then finishing 11th, to then finishing 3rd. It's crazy, to Tomac being mid-pack, to being somewhat up front, to now winning by a lot. Like, he just cleaned house out front. I am so stoked for this freaking season. We are seeing so much different dynamics with racing and everything with this track. With how they changed it to the over-under, I'm glad they did it, because the worst part of this entire track were those little roller sections. They were supposed to come out the other direction, but you were doing it backwards now, and it was just basically the only breather that guys had on the track, where they just were, But there's There's so much to talk about, but I'm not going to give away some of the notes that I have because I've got 12 freaking pages of here. So I'm going to let you guys all go and watch the press conference because oh man, the questions I would ask, but also keep it real. Keep it real because that's what we got to do. But also keep it WFO. I know I'm missing something, but till next time, guys, enjoy your Sunday, sleep in, go to church, do whatever the F you want to do, ride that darn dirt bike, twist it, keep that elbow down, and just pin going forward. Look forward to this week.